American serial killer Dennis Lynn Rader, born March 9, 1945, is also known as BTK, a name he gave himself for bind, torture, kill. Between 1974 and 1991, he murdered at least 10 people between Wichita and Park City, Kansas. Rader usually targeted women, but he also killed and attempted to kill men and children on occasion. His victims were frequently bound, likely with items from their own houses, then strangled by hand with a ligature or smothered with a garbage bag. He also took personal belongings, driver's IDs, and undergarments as mementos from his female victims. Rader frequently sent taunting letters covering his actions in detail to the police and media. After a 13-year break, Rader started writing again in 2004, which resulted in his arrest in 2005 and his guilty plea. He is presently incarcerated at the El Dorado Correctional Facility for 10 consecutive life sentences. Rader's wife was given an immediate divorce on July 26, 2005 following his arrest, which eliminated the customary 60-day waiting period. According to his daughter Carrie, who spoke to her father and has since forgiven him, she still finds it difficult to reconcile her normal upbringing with the fact that she was raised by the BTK killer her entire life. But during the 2024 CrimeCon in Nashville, Tennessee, Carrie shared passages from her father's diary, which showed that he had essayed her while she was still a little child. Edmund Keer. Between May 1972 and April 1973, he was found guilty of killing 7 women and 1 girl. Keer had killed his paternal grandparents when he was 15 years old. He was known as the co-ed killer because most of his victims were female college students who were hitchhiking in the Santa Cruz County, California area. The majority of his murders involved dismemberment, decapitation, and necrophilia. At his 1973 trial, Keer was found sane and guilty and asked to be executed for his crimes. He was given 8 concurrent life sentences because California at the time did not have the death penalty. He has been detained at the California Medical Facility in Vacaville ever since. Keer was brought to psychiatrists for a re-evaluation shortly after his arrival at California Medical Facility in 1973. His personality problems were re-diagnosed as schizotypal, narcissistic, and antisocial. In an interview, Keer, who is a Christian now, said he had learned to live with God and himself. Keer was denied parole in 2017 and again in 2024 after refusing to appear at a parole hearing. In 2031, he will be eligible again. According to reports during his 2024 parole hearing, Keer had coronary heart disease, diabetes, and was wheelchair-bound. In April 2024, a mental health assessment determined that he was at high risk of committing crimes again. One of his victims was his own mother. Among other things, after killing her, he put her head on a shelf and threw darts at her face. Gary Ridgway. He is known as the Green River Killer. At first, he was found guilty of 48 different killings that took place between the early 1980s and the late 1990s. He received another conviction as part of his plea deal, increasing his total to 49 convictions. Based on documented murders, he is now the second most prolific serial murderer in American history. The majority of Ridgway's victims were sex workers and other women in precarious situations, such as minors who had fled their homes. Following the discovery of the first 5 victims in the Green River, the media gave him his nickname before his identity was revealed. Usually by hand, but occasionally using ligatures, he strangled his victims. He would strangle them and then dispose of their bodies in King County's wooded and overgrown areas, frequently going back to the bodies to indulge in necrophilia. Since 1982, Ridgway had been suspected of the killings, but at that time, detectives were unable to connect him to the murders. On November 30, 2001, Ridgway was arrested as he was leaving the Kenworth truck manufacturing in Renton, Washington, where he worked, after investigators were able to conclusively link him to the crimes thanks to later developments in DNA analysis. He was spared the death penalty and given a life sentence without the possibility of parole, as part of a plea deal in which he vowed to reveal the whereabouts of women who are still missing. Rididgeway confessed to murdering at least 71 people. David Burkowitz, son of Sam. He pled guilty to carrying out 8 shootings in New York City between July 1976 and July 1977, killing 6 people in total. He is also known as the son of Sam and the .44 caliber killer. Burkowitz was a member of the U.S. Army and was raised in New York City. By July 1977, he had terrorized New Yorkers with a revolver, killing 6 and wounding 7. Burkowitz sent letters insulting the police and vowing further crimes, which were widely reported by the media, and he managed to evade the largest police manhunt in the city's history. After being taken into custody on August 10, 1977, Burkowitz was charged with 8 shootings. He admitted to all of them and at first stated that he had been following the commands of a demon that had appeared as his neighbor Sam's black dog. He entered a guilty plea to second-degree murder after being determined to be mentally competent to stand trial. He was given 6 consecutive life terms in state prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Later on, he acknowledged that the dog and devil narrative was not true. According to state law, Burkowitz is entitled to a parole hearing every 2 years, but he has continuously declined to request his release and occasionally skipped the meetings entirely. In May 2024, his 12th parole hearing was turned down. He acknowledged to the Post prior to his hearing that he knew he had little chance of receiving parole, yet he still went. He said he mostly goes to these hearings to express how sorry he is for what he did. In May 2026, he will have another parole hearing. Charles Cullen. During a 16-year career that spanned multiple medical sites in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, Cullen killed dozens, if not hundreds, of patients while working as a nurse until being taken into custody in 2003. Although he admitted to up to 40 murders, at least 29 of which have been proven, he may have done many more, according to police, psychiatrists, and journalist interviews. According to the investigators close to the case, Cullen may have killed up to 400 people. However, because most killings are not documented, they cannot be verified. Cullen said he overdosed people in order to prevent them from experiencing respiratory or cardiac arrest and being classified as a code blue emergency. He informed investigators that he could not stand to see or hear about efforts to save a victim's life. Additionally, Cullen said that he overdosed people in order to put an end to their misery and stop medical staff from demeaning them. But not every one of his victims had a terminal illness. Before Cullen killed them, some were supposed to recover. Cullen agreed in his plea deal to assist the authorities in the event that they decided not to pursue the capital punishment for his offenses. On March 2, 2006, Judge Armstrong in New Jersey sentenced Cullen to 18 consecutive life sentences. He will not be eligible for parole until June 10, 2403. Randall Woodfield. Because of the crimes he perpetrated along the Interstate 5 corridor that passes through Washington, Oregon, and California, the media dubbed him the I-5 killer or the I-5 bandit. Woodfield was suspected of several homicides and essays prior to his apprehension. He has been connected to 18 murders and is suspected of killing up to 44 people while only having been convicted of 1. At knife point, Woodfield started a series of robberies and essays on women in Portland in 1975. He carried out killings in locations along the I-5 corridor between 1980 and 1981. The first recorded murder was that of Cherry Ayers, a classmate he had known since he was a young boy, in October 1980. Following a string of violent acts, Woodfield was apprehended in March 1981 and found guilty in June of killing Shari Hull and attempting to kill her co-worker Beth Wilmot. He received a sentence of 90 years plus life in prison. In a later trial, he was found guilty of sodomy and improper use of a weapon in a case involving essay, and his sentence was increased by 35 years. He is currently incarcerated at the Oregon State Penitentiary. 10 white women in their 20s, usually from middle-class families, made up the majority of his victims. Young workers at restaurants and convenience stores along Interstate 5, which Woodfield drove in his 1974 Champagne Edition gold Volkswagen Beetle, were among his victims, especially in cases of robbery and essay. Woodfield's crimes were sometimes completely random, and in other cases, the killings were prompted by sexual initiatives that were turned down. He had varying degrees of familiarity with his victims. Some were total strangers, while others he knew personally. Woodfield usually wore a hoodie, a fake beard, and, most oddly, a strip of athletic tape over his nose to hide his identity during his thefts, assaults, and murders. According to authorities, he might have done this to hide his characteristics so that victims wouldn't be able to recognize him in a lineup. He usually used a gun to kill his victims. During his time in the penitentiary, Woodfield has been married 3 times and divorced twice. Robert Lee Yates, also referred to as the grocery bag killer, he killed at least 11 women in Spokane between 1975 and 1998. In addition, he admitted to 2 killings in Walla Walla in 1975 and 1 in Skagit County in 1988. After the Washington Supreme Court declared the death penalty unconstitutional in 2018, Yates's 2002 death sentence for the murders of 2 women in Pierce County was commuted to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He is incarcerated at the Washington State Penitentiary. In 1975, while 2 college students were enjoying a picnic together, Yates shot and murdered them, committing his first murder. Yates would frequently use drugs with his victims, including other sex workers who were mostly substance-addicted sex workers along East Sprague Avenue. Yates first approached the victim, had sex with them, usually in his Ford van, then killed them and dumped their remains in rural areas. Every one of his victims passed away from head or heart gunshot wounds. Yates was arrested on April 18, 2000. Paul Bernardo and Carla Homulka. He is a Canadian serial killer and rapist known as the Schoolgirl Killer or the Scarborough Rapist. He partnered with his then-wife Carla Homulka to commit 3 murders, one of the victims being Carla's younger sister. Together, they were called Ken and Barbie Killers. After being apprehended and found guilty, Bernardo was given a life sentence and labeled a dangerous criminal, meaning it is doubtful that he will ever be allowed to leave prison. A year prior to the spree attributed to the Scarborough Rapist, Bernardo admitted to 10 further essays after being found guilty. Homulka was released from prison after accepting a contentious plea deal that reduced her term in exchange for testifying against Bernardo. She said she only participated in the crimes because she was forced by her husband, citing domestic violence. Bernardo has been denied parole 3 times, most recently on November 26, 2024. On the psychopathy checklist, a psychological test intended to determine if a person is a psychopath, Bernardo had a score of 35 out of 40. This falls under the category of clinical psychopathy. In comparison, Homulka had a score of 5 out of 40. Homulka was tried on June 28, 1993. However, the court's publication restricted the information that was made public because the public was not allowed to watch the proceedings. On July 6, 1993, she received a 12-year prison sentence. After being freed in 2005, Homulka moved to Quebec and married her lawyer's brother. She lives alone in Celeberry de Valleyfield as of January 2020 without her spouse or kids. Joel Rifkin. For killing 9 women between 1989 and 1993, he received a 203-year prison sentence, but it is thought he killed up to 17 women. On February 20, 1989, Rifkin killed Heidi Balch in his East Meadow house, his first murder. After that, he dismembered her body, taking her teeth and fingerprints, disposing of her legs further north, dumping her limbs and torso into the East River near New York City, and placing her head in a paint can that he left in the woods on a golf course in Hopewell, New Jersey. Balk's severed head was found on the golf course 7th hole on March 5, 1989. Her legs were discovered close to Jefferson Township, New Jersey on April 8, 1989. It wasn't until 2013 that her remains were identified. Over the following 4 years, Rifken is thought to have murdered 16 additional women. After his arrest in 1993, he was linked to the murder of Balk. In 2013, investigators concluded that Balk and the woman he described as his first victim were the same person. On June 24, 1993, Rifken picked up prostitute Tiffany Bresciani on Ellen Street in Manhattan with her boyfriend and pimp, punk rock musician Dave Rubenstein. Tiffany told Rubenstein that she would be back in 20 minutes. When Bresciani did not come back, Rubenstein described the 1984 Mazda pickup truck that Rifkin was driving to the authorities. Less than 2 weeks after her passing, David Rubenstein overdosed and killed himself. A 1984 Mazda B2000 pickup truck without a license plate was spotted by state police on patrol along Long Island's Southern State Parkway at 3:15 a.m. on June 28, 1993. The driver was told to stop, but he didn't, and the police chased him for 20 to 25 minutes until he lost control and collided with a light pole. The troopers discovered Tiffany Bresciani's body wrapped in a tarpaulin after searching the car and identifying the driver as Joel David Rifkin. There were rumors that Rifkin might be behind the Gilgo Beach serial killings, but he denied any connection to the case, and the finding timeline did not coincide with Rifkin's active years. Rex Hurman, a Massapequa Park architect, was detained and accused of killing multiple women discovered on Gilgo Beach back in 2023. Joseph James DAngelo, Golden State Killer. Between 1974 and 1986, he perpetrated 120 burglaries, 51 essays, and at least 13 murders in California. He was accused of committing 3 distinct crime sprees across the state, each of which gave rise to a different press nickname until it was revealed that the perpetrator was the same. Before relocating to the Sacramento region, where he became known as the East Region Rapist from 1976 to 1979 and was connected by his method of operation to other crimes in Stockton, Modesto, and Contra Costa County, DAngelo was known in the San Joaquin Valley as the Visalia Ransacker from 1974 to 1976. Known as the Night Stalker and then the original Night Stalker to distinguish him from Richard Ramirez, a later serial murderer who also became known as the Night Stalker, DAngelo conducted serial killings in Santa Barbara, Ventura, and Orange counties between 1979 and 1986. Through obscene phone calls and potentially written correspondence, he is suspected of taunting and threatening victims as well as authorities. A number of suspects were cleared over the decades-long investigation thanks to alibis, DNA evidence, and other investigative techniques. The Golden State Killer name was given in 2013. The FBI, along with local law enforcement agencies, announced a reinvigorated countrywide investigation and offered a $50,000 reward for the capture of the Golden State Killer at a news conference on June 15, 2016. Based on DNA evidence, California officials accused 72-year-old DAngelo with 8 counts of first-degree murder on April 24, 2018. Investigators used forensic genetic genealogy to identify DAngelo's family members. Additionally, this was the first disclosure linking DAngelo to the Visalia Ransacker crimes. DAngelo was charged in August 2018 with 13 connected kidnapping and abduction attempts, although he was not charged with the essays he had committed in the 1970s due to California's statute of limitations on essay prosecutions prior to 2017. DAngelo entered a guilty plea to several charges of kidnapping and murder on June 29, 2020. In a plea agreement that spared him the death penalty, he reportedly acknowledged committing essays and other crimes for which he had not been indicted. DAngelo was given a life sentence without the possibility of parole on August 21, 2020. DAngelo moved from Citrus Heights to Exeter and worked as a burglary unit police officer from May 1973 until August 1976. He then served in Auburn from August 1976 to July 1979 when he was arrested for stealing a dog repellent and a hammer from a store. He was discharged that October after receiving a 6-month probationary sentence. DAngelo allegedly stalked the police chief's home and threatened to kill him while he was being fired. He married Sharon Marie Huddle in November 1973. They bought a home in Citrus Heights in 1980, and decades later he was arrested there. They had 3 daughters, 2 born in Sacramento and 1 in Los Angeles, and Huddle started practicing divorce law in 1982. In 1991, the couple split up. Huddle filed for divorce in July 2018, a few months after DAngelo was arrested, and the divorce was formalized the following year. DAngelo was married and raising a family when he committed the majority of the felonies. He was doing terrible crimes, but neither his wife nor his kids ever suspected it. His wife accepted his justifications for being away from home, while his oldest daughter deemed him to be a perfect father. As of February 2021, DAngelo is incarcerated in protective custody at California State Prison, Corcoran. Scott Lee Kimble. Over the course of 2 years, he killed at least 4 individuals, and detectives have a strong suspicion that he is responsible for up to 21 other unsolved murders. He served as an FBI informant for the first year of his murderous activities, receiving compensation and immunity from prosecution for some of his fraud schemes. Much of the information he provided to the agency ultimately turned out to be untrue, and nearly none of it was useful in the prosecution of additional offenses. The case severely humiliated the Bureau. 2 of Kimble's victims were close relatives, his own uncle and the daughter of his 3rd wife. According to his 2nd wife, who gave birth to his 2 sons, he abducted and essayed her twice. Some detectives and Kimble's family members suspect that a 2004 car accident that seriously hurt his oldest son was actually an effort to kill the boy for insurance money. However, charges were never filed because of jurisdictional difficulties that prevented prosecution. While incarcerated, his wife divorced him. He then married a female prisoner who is incarcerated for child abuse and whom he had never met in person. We will talk more in depth about some of these serial killers in the videos that will follow. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.